pieces of this team has added, Vince, in just the past few days?
Oh, dream team.
Those words by Eagles backup quarterback Vince Young describe the 2011 season perfectly. The Eagles were expected to be a Super Bowl contender with the amount of additions to the roster they had added, including Young himself, but instead they finished just 8-8. Before we go into details about what happened, we have to talk about the 2010 season and what happened to the Eagles during that season. Going into that 2010 season, the Eagles had a quarterback battle between second-round pick from the 2007 NFL Draft Kevin Kolb, along with veteran quarterback Michael Vick, who had just been released from prison on federal charges for a dogfighting ring. Kolb was expected to win the job over Vick, and in the preseason they had a quarterback battle in which Kolb won easily. He eventually became the starter for their Week 1 matchup against the Green Bay Packers. For Andy Reid, he thought it was the right decision, considering the fact that Vick was a good backup to have. And during the Week 1 matchup, something horrible happened. For Eagles fans who were watching the game in person, Eagles starting quarterback Kevin Kolb went down with a concussion, meaning Vick was elevated into it. But during the game, Vick showed flashes of talent in what could be a great, remarkable comeback season. Vick showed flashes during the game and nearly led an Eagles victory, but they ran out of time. The Eagles' offensive weapons that year for Vick, who eventually earned the starting job, was impressive. They had second-year receiver Jeremy Maclin, who had a great sophomore season for the Eagles that year. And the Eagles also had deep threat Deshaun Jackson, who Vick threw bombs to, and the two connected as a deadly duo, with Vick throwing deep bombs to Jackson, who was the deep threat. He could burn any secondary, and he couldn't be stopped. There was no secondary that could cover Jackson when he was in his prime, which was his early years. The Eagles also had a top 3 running game in the NFL, led by LaShawn McCoy, a second-year running back, who had a great sophomore season. McCoy, who's now known as a Hall of Famer by Eagles fans, was expected to lead the franchise, and he did just that season. The Eagles also had Vick himself, despite being 30 years old. He was able to rush and keep drives going. He was one of the best runners the Eagles have ever had since Randall. The Eagles also had a great season, going into a 9-4 game against the New York Giants, in which they needed a win. Against Matt Dodge, who was punting the ball to them, the Eagles managed to get one last chance at winning the game. Sean Jackson bobbled the snap and returned the punt for a touchdown, winning the game 38-31. That game is now known as the Miracle at the Meadowlands, in which the Eagles won the game. It also secured them the NFC East title, giving them their first division title for the first time since the 2006 season, in which they had made a Cinderella run under Jeff Garcia. That season, they had upset the Giants in the Meadowlands, and the Eagles had also secured a spot in the playoffs. Then we must go forward to their next game, January 9th, 2011, against the Packers in the wild card. They got a rematch against the Packers, who were the 6th seed. The Eagles were driving with a chance to win, but down by 5. Vick threw a costly interception in the end zone, which ended their season. The interception by Vick was very heartbreaking, considering the fact that would be Vick's last ever playoff pass thrown in an NFL playoff game. It would also be the last time the Eagles fans ever witnessed a playoff game at home for a very long time. Eagles fans were very disappointed about how the season ended, but considering the fact of what they were dealing with without their star of the future, they did good. Eagles were without their star quarterback Donovan McNabb, who they traded to Washington, and they were also without Brian Westbrook, their franchise-caliber running back, who then signed with the 49ers that offseason. Eagles GM Howie Roseman knew he needed to do something, and he needed to do something fast if he was going to save this sinking ship. The Eagles started off by trading the expendable Kevin Kolb to the Cardinals in exchange for a 2012 second-round pick and Rogers Cromartie, a cornerback who had depth at secondary. Eagles knew that Kolb was expendable. He went from backup in Philadelphia to starter in Arizona. And to Arizona at the time, they paid him a decent amount of money. They paid him like $64 million over 5 years. The Eagles got Roger Cromartie, who would go on to have one of the best, be a decent secondary piece for them for the next 2 years. And it helped to increase their dream team. The Eagles also knew they had to pay Michael Vick, so they paid him handsomely with a 6-year deal worth over $100 million. And this was good considering the fact that the season Vick was coming off of. Vick was considered a comeback player of the year winner. He had a Pro Bowl nod and had some of the best numbers that any Eagles quarterback has ever had in a while during that 2010 season. The Eagles hadn't had a great quarterback who was able to dominate in both the rush and pass in a long time since Randall. the Eagles' stats, he dominated in both the pass and the rush. Like, when it came to, like, the stats, like, he had career highs in passing touchdowns, but the Eagles still needed veteran insurance, so they went out and signed veteran quarterback Vince Young, who was recently released by the Titans. Young was a 3rd overall pick out of Texas, and he had some decent success in the NFL, being a 2-time Pro Bowler, a Comeback Player of the Year in 2009, and leading his team to the playoffs in 2007. He also got praised to the Madden cover, but despite that, Young never had any solid statistics. He was mediocre both the pass and the rush. But still, with Vince Young, the Eagles now knew they had veteran insurance behind Vic, because if Vic were to go down, Young could play, since he had starting experience and major starting experience, as you could tell by the record and the stats. The Eagles also added another veteran quarterback, Nnamdi Asumaka. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he signed a 5-year deal with the Eagles, making him an Eagle for life. And going up to that point, he was coming off a year in which he had made the Pro Bowl again, and he was a 3-time Pro Bowler and 2-time All-Pro. He had made back-to-back Pro Bowls, and his 2-time All-Pro also helped out the situation a lot. As you can tell by these stats, he was one of the better cornerbacks of the last 3 years. And that with Philadelphia, he could possibly bring that mediocre defense into a top 5 defense. Maybe even more of a top, deadly defense. But going into that 2011 season, hope was extremely high, and Eagles fans were very excited. The Dream Team started out on the right foot with a 31-13 demolishment of the St. Louis Rams led by Sam Bradford. But after that, things started to completely fall off for the team. It all started with a single loss to the Atlanta Falcons, in which Mike Kafka failed to lead a game-winning drive, and a dropped pass by Jeremy Maclin on 4th and 4 sealed it. The Dream Team would continue to struggle, with them beginning on a losing streak, and they would start out losing 5 of their next 7. Despite a game against the Giants, which could have decided their division hopes, Vince Young did just enough to lead a game-winning drive, which is why Vince Young was brought in. He did just enough to lead a game-winning drive against the Giants. That game-winning drive gave the Eagles a record of 3-6, and also got them back in the playoff hunt. But they would need to nearly win out to even make a playoff run, since the Giants were also struggling and were at the top of the NFC East, which was weak at the time. The Eagles would go on to lose to the New England Patriots and Seattle Seahawks in humiliating fashion, but despite the 2 losses, they still won out, but were eliminated on December 24th, Christmas Eve, despite a win over the Dallas Cowboys, due to the fact the Giants had won. The Dream Team had failed. After the 8-8 finish, the Eagles started off the next offseason by releasing multiple players. They released Vince Young, who would go on to sign with the Bills, Packers, and Browns before retiring in 2014. The Eagles would also then release Rogers Cromartie the following season in 2012. Despite having decent stats, Cromartie is still a decent player to this day and still plays in the NFL. And their free agent, who they signed to a 5-year deal, completely fell off, and they released him in 2012 as well. Where did it all go wrong? The reason why the Dream Team fell off, in my opinion, is because of the defensive coordinator change from future Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott to Juan Castillo, who was a defensive coordinator who had never been a defensive coordinator, actually. He last coached defenses in 1989 in high school. He also had been part of the Eagles' offensive line. The hiring was surprising considering the fact McDermott was actually doing a great job as a coordinator for Andy Reid. But yeah, that's why the Dream Team fell. The defense was the main reason why, in my opinion. The offense was actually pretty consistent with the amount of Pro Bowlers and great receivers they had. It was just the defense. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please consider checking out more content, and yeah, I'll see you guys later.